Dan and Amy, so this just coming over the transom, according to The Hill, thehill.com, Trump now will not release the results of his recent physical on the Dr. Oz show tomorrow. They will instead, according to Trump campaign aides, have a general conversation about healthy living and positive thinking. That's a mistake. That's unacceptable.
This is huge news. I mean, they've been touting this huge reveal, the big reveal about his latest physical that he took. So then when is he going to release his physical that he promised that he would release to the American people?
Well, right.
Because that was supposed to be done on the Oz show. So now it's never going to happen?
Well, if he does not release those results in some other public venue or make available to the press, he doesn't have to do it on the Dr. Oz show. But if he doesn't do it as he said he would, then he's being dishonest and disingenuous, and he's also being politically less than astute, in my estimation, because he's going to muddy the issue of honesty regarding health with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, he can't hammer the fact that Hillary Clinton is not transparent when he's not being transparent himself.
Well,
I mean, the taxes are one thing, and that doesn't sit well with me. But now the medical records and his recent physical, I mean, if he has nothing to hide, then just release it.
Well, our next guest may disagree. I don't know. He has sort of sussed out Trump's communication style from the beginning of this campaign, way early on in the primary. Scott Adams, who is, of course, the creator of the widely and worldly popular Dilbert cartoon strip, he had this to say about Trump right from Jump Street.
What I see in Trump is a set of skills that are so deep and so exquisite, it would be hard for me to imagine anybody beating him. And so I've predicted he'll go all the way and win the presidency.
He'll go all the way and win the presidency. That was Scott Adams back in the primary. And, well,
maybe he knew something we didn't know.
Apparently he does. So let's get his insights, because he seems to have his finger on the pulse of some things. Scott Adams, creator of Dilbert, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me so I can sort this out for you.
Yes, please, please do. So I want to start with the question, though, and you posted this on your blog a few weeks back, but you think Trump is going to win, and you just recently tweeted that our next president will either be an offensive, rich, divisive bigot with a bad haircut or Donald Trump. So it doesn't sound like you're too complimentary of Hillary Clinton, but you endorsed her on your blog. Please explain.
Well, I endorsed Hillary Clinton for my personal safety because I live in California. And out here, if you're even talking about Trump, it's dangerous. I hear from a lot of people who have actually been assaulted because they wore a Trump hat or were associated with him or just said something good about him. So it's actually a physical safety thing. I say it, people think I'm joking about it, but it's only funny by coincidence. I actually do that seriously. But I'm not smart enough to know who has the best policies. I don't know anything about international trade or fighting ISIS. So I don't have a preference that way.
But you do have insight on the communication piece of it, and so it seems to be the grand insight of the campaign cycle so far. So explain.
Yeah, communication-wise, I noticed that Trump has the skills of a persuader. I'm a trained hypnotist, and I have a lot of the same tools that I see him using, and that's what I noticed last year. Now, I have no reason to think he's a trained hypnotist, but the tools of persuasion are pretty common to anybody who studies influence or anybody who wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. I mean, negotiating is just persuasion. So Trump is an expert persuader, and when I saw that last year, it looked to me like he was bringing a flamethrower to a stick fight. It didn't look like it was even going to be close in the end, and I think that's the way it's going to shape up. But if I could just ask you a question about the health records.
Yeah.
In the world of persuasion, the thing that you focus on the most becomes the most important in your mind. So if Trump had released his health records, we'd talk about them for a while and then move on to the next topic. By not releasing them and having two hits on that, making us talk about it twice, once when he's on Oz, as in, why didn't he release those records? And then once again when he actually releases them, we focus on health as a topic of more importance for a longer period of time. Now, I don't know if he's doing that intentionally.
Oh, that's interesting.
Reasons for doing it. But the outcome will be that you thought about health as a more important factor versus all the other things such as immigration policy or economics or anything else. And that favors him.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
You're starting to hypnotize me.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott, in your recent blog, when you talked about Hillary Clinton's health issues, you said that now it's certain that she is unelectable.
Yeah, she has the worst timing of any candidate in the history of the world because it's one thing that she collapsed and it's one thing that was caught on camera. Those are two insanely unlucky things happening. But it happened on the site of the biggest terror attack in American history, the scariest thing that Americans think about, and the thing that makes you think most about who's your commander-in-chief and how competent are they and how able are they when the stuff goes down. So to do it on the day of the anniversary, on the site of 9/11, is associating the two worst things in your mind that she would want you to associate, which is her as commander-in-chief collapsing and 9/11 and terrorism threats. Those are all the worst things she could possibly have you think in your mind at the same time.
Well, I think you're hypnotizing me.
No, I mean,
I love what you're saying.
Well,
It's true.
you're a persuader. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
interesting perspective. I want to go back to what you said though about Trump and health and just the range of issues because they're both so unpopular according to opinion polls, and it's a very close race. Despite as you said, she has the worst timing of any candidate in history, and he is a master persuader. So why is that? But but the thing you said about his health, and just think about it globally. So he raises an issue, even controversy, even for short-term detriment by not releasing his health records, just to continue this example. Because ultimately it's going to pay dividends when he does release and there's nothing there. And if that's what happens, and then he gets the two bites. And he's been doing this on other issues from immigration to trade policy and the like.
Yeah, I first noticed this technique during the very first debate in the primaries where he was asked a number of questions about his comments about women in the past. And instead of answering them in some kind of normal politician denial explanation type of way, he brought up Rosie O'Donnell and just took all of your attention into this fun, interesting, and in the case of Republicans, unpopular figure.
Right.
And it's a very visual thing, and it's impossible to not talk about once he says it. So if you watch what Trump does, it's not so much how he deals with facts or reason, but rather where he puts your attention. Because where your attention is what you will define as truth and important in the long run.
Have you ever spoken with Trump?
Not directly, no.
I just wonder if you think that this is something that's intuitive or this is something that's actually a practice skill.
Well, I will tell you, his minister when he was a kid.
Yeah, Norman Vincent Peale. Yeah.
Have you heard that name?
Yeah, yep.
The power of positive thinking.
Yep.
And in his day, Norman Vincent Peale was the most influential power of positive thinking, sort of use your mind to change your environment person. And he was actually accused of being a hypnotist in his time. So the tools of persuasion are something that Trump has been, deeply surrounded in since early childhood.
Now, you said you haven't spoken directly with Donald Trump, but have you spoken via social media or to any of his assistants?
Well, everything I put in my blog is sort of directed at the campaign, and I talk about persuasion there. So I'm pretty sure that both sides have read the blog and a lot of the media. But I don't know anybody. I don't know Trump directly, but I know a few people who know him.
Do you think that, you made a lot of these observations in the primary when he's running against 16 other candidates. The skill that he demonstrates as a communicator that you've identified, whether it's purposeful or intuitive, or what, practiced and learned or intuitive. Do you think it doesn't matter whether it's a primary in a different electoral universe versus a general? Those same skills ultimately serve him because there is something kind of endemic to the human condition for which his communication skills have appeal.
Yes, his communication skills are what matter, and the policies and the details don't. So that's the opposite of how most people see the world. But as a hypnotist, the first thing you have to learn, and in fact you can't even be a hypnotist if you don't understand this first, is that people only think they care about facts, and they only think they're using reason. The way we're actually wired, and by the way, science completely supports this, we make our decisions first on some emotional level, and then everything that happens after is a rationalization. So if you look at the things that Trump said were his policy preferences a year ago and compare it to now, you'll see that in some substantial ways they've drifted or changed. And it doesn't seem to matter. He's just growing in popularity. So if his policies were what mattered, then changing it would probably make a bad difference, or you would see people acting more rationally at least. You really don't see that.
Well, just on the emotional quotient, people make their decisions emotionally first. That's
Like a woman.
That's common. Well, no, it's commonly understood. But
yeah.
but normally, what you have politicians do, thinking about that, is be empathetic to the point of pandering. Donald Trump seems to do the opposite.
He does what he needs when he needs to do it. So you saw that when he was in a deep hole at about the time of the Democratic convention, he made his comments about the Khan family, which was a really clever persuasion trap set by the other side, by the way. He was in a deep hole, and he needed to prove that he cared about everybody, not just the people who were supporting him at the moment. And he started to do some outreach and went to some African-American churches and changed his style a little bit. And those changes registered with people. So it doesn't matter, what the facts were or what anybody said. If they see him talking to an African-American church, people's minds say, okay, we associate him with that. That's what we wanted. And on an emotional level, he feels more, has more empathy. And by the way, the definition of charisma, the scientific definition, is a combination of power plus empathy. And Trump had shown lots of power in the primaries, but he was severely lacking in empathy. And when he added that extra element, and you see him doing it almost every day now, almost everything he does is designed to demonstrate that he's a real person with real empathy, which, by the way, I think is probably true. I think, on an individual level, they're all human beings and they all have empathy. And it's working.
All right. He's Scott Adams. Interesting stuff. Scott Adams, the creator of the syndicated Dilbert cartoon strip. Scott, thanks so much for joining us, sharing your insights. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.